Welcome to a special digital DJ tips podcast, or should I say series, because we're going to record more than one of them. Well, that constitutes a series, doesn't it, Steve? We're calling it Digital DJ Tips Uncut. I've invited Digital DJ Tips co-conspirator Steve to join me, which is different because normally it's just me on our podcast.
It's good to be here.
The reason for it, thank you, Steve, it's good to have you here. The reason for it is that we wanted to spend a bit of time talking about our lives as DJs before we ran this school, and this school's nearly 16 years old, and we've worked together here for most of those years. But we were DJs before for as long, or at least we were in this industry for as long before, and it's something we don't get a chance to talk about. So we thought, because we teach DJing by talking about gear, music, mixing, performing, and success, we would take those 5 categories and share a story or two from our lives, which is what we're going to do for this edition.
Sounds great.
Well, let's start with success, because some people, Steve, and I dare say most of them in your case, literally don't know what you did before. I blather on all the time about my life before Digital DJ Tips, but your life's a bit more of an enigma. So let's start with you. What success did you have as a DJ in the music industry? Where did it start? Where did it lead?
Yeah, I taught myself to mix and scratch when I was, I think 13, 14 was when I first started, and was really into hip hop music and scratching and that style of DJing. Followed my heroes, DJ Jazzy Jeff, DJ Cheese, Grandmaster Flash, these guys. Taught myself to do it. Was a bedroom DJ pretty much for a good couple of years, literally where nobody other than me ever heard me doing anything. It was those years of practicing, and and I still remember very clearly when a friend from school came to my house and saw me doing it, and literally his jaw just dropped and said, "Oh my God," because I was actually quite good.
That's what you've been doing the last 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Then when I was 16, I actually, me and my first girlfriend decided to up sticks from where we lived and move to London, and that was 88, 89, right in the middle of the birth of the rave scene there, Summer of Love and all the rest of it. And just immersed myself in that world, started DJing in clubs and festivals, and but I was never a full-time DJ. So DJing success for me came from having a career in the music industry as a result of being really, really into music and DJing. And so that led me through to working at record labels and music distribution companies, and then eventually at Ministry of Sound, which is a very famous nightclub, which at the time of recording is 35 years old this year.
Wow.
I actually went to the opening night there, believe it or not.
And you were back there last weekend, weren't you?
For
the 35th anniversary celebration.
Bit of a reunion session, with Masters at Work, which was amazing. So I started working in the record company, and putting together compilation albums. And doing the mixing for them in a lot of cases as well. So my knowledge as a DJ and my love of music just helped me get work in the music industry. And I kind of, did that I was in that industry for 16 years, is pretty much what you said. So I was never a full-time DJ, but DJing took me into that industry.
I guess what people would never know, because you need to look at the very, very small print, is that a lot of those million-selling mixed CDs from back in the day, from the 90s and into the 2000s, that literally were the way that they were the dance music equivalent of listening to Spotify's, Dance Top 100 nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everyone had them, from the girls in the hairdressers up to your clubbing mates. Everyone had these CDs.
Yeah.
You mixed them, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So you say you were never a DJ, but ultimately you were probably heard more than any other DJ for a certain time in the UK. They just didn't know it.
It's true. If any listeners are particularly bored and have time on your hands, if you actually search for my name on Discogs, you will see all of the credits for me mixing and producing hundreds of Ministry of Sound mix CDs. And also, while we're just throwing let me just throw in a little story. So I produced all of the mixes with Pete Tong, Boy George, Judge Jules, loads of big name DJs, and Boy George in particular was somebody who had a reputation for getting lots of gigs and getting lots of bookings, but in my view was not a very good DJ, and certainly that was very clear when you were listening to one of his mixes that he recorded that was going to be put on a compilation album that was going to be distributed potentially to hundreds of thousands of people, it wasn't good enough. But he would never admit it himself. So me and the studio engineer used to go in and help him out with some of the mixes afterwards, basically redo them in order that they were good enough quality to go out. So I don't think I've ever told that story publicly.
Well, he's a keen listener to this podcast, so I'm sure he'll be in touch.
So yeah, I did. I mixed a lot. I mixed a lot of albums. So yeah, it just shows how the love of music and the love of DJing took me into something that wasn't specifically being a DJ full time.
And I guess you didn't plan to be mixing million-selling CDs when you were messing around in your bedroom at 16.
That industry just didn't even exist at that point.
And that's actually, it plays into my story a bit, because for me it was the same. The industry didn't exist. There was no industry to have a plan in. We discovered clubbing and raving a couple of years after you did. I'd already been a DJ. I'd been DJing as a mobile DJ, and I really loved radio. I wanted to be a radio DJ. And then I suddenly realized, no, this is what I want to do. I want to be a club DJ. And then I spent 5 years thinking this is all going to fall down at any point, because no one, a lot of what we did was borderline illegal. Certainly the parties, the police would have had a say on the licensing and the legality of most of the stuff that interested me. So we thought it might last a summer or a year or two, and this industry kind of built up around it, and we didn't even know we were part of this industry. We didn't realise that we were helping to build it.
No.
And so for me, putting on club nights and suggesting ideas to venue owners and stuff just seemed to be an obvious gap to fill in Manchester, in England, where I'm from, because they didn't know what they were doing. I had the music, I wanted to play it, and I was a guy who they could talk to about it. I was presentable and I had ideas. So I just spent 5 years being a not very good DJ in a great city. But what I didn't realise was I was learning the skills all along, not only DJing, but also promoting and getting people to come to a venue. And that was how it all happened for me. I was a DJ promoter, and that meant I suddenly had the money to book the DJs who I felt were worth booking.
But when did you make that decision to move from like DJing for other people to promoting yourself?
When we got a venue with a manager we trusted, and realised that if we took the money on the door and did a good job of spending that money, we could probably keep more of it.
Right.
And no one would book us. No one would book me. No one would book Phil Morse at 24 years old. So I had to throw my own parties to get an audience. And so that it kind of
the entrepreneur was there was there early.
Definitely, yeah. In fact, I've got a great story. My very first records were bought because I was an entrepreneur. I started a shop selling sweets in my school because they had one of these lessons that taught you to be an entrepreneur, and the girls were making jewellery, and I'm like, we don't want to make jewellery, let's sell sweets, kids want sweets. And we were right. We quickly made a lot of money, to the point where the headmaster taxed us. Headmaster said, I've got to close you down. You've outlasted the remit of this lesson. And we're like, well, how much do you want? And we lasted a couple more terms by paying him. But the story is that gave us money to go and buy records. And then when we bought records, we bought the equipment to play them on. So I was actually DJing before I left school through that route. Anyway, to get back to the point, that because I was promoting and because I was making money and because I was meeting all the DJs I liked, and I was booking the DJs I wanted to play with, they reciprocated, and I ended up playing in Ibiza, in the biggest club in the world, and ultimately doing everything DJing could possibly have expected it to give me. It all happened in about a 15-year period. And so my success was unlike yours. Mine was being led by being a DJ, and the rest of it kind of happened, I guess. But it was only at the point where I started looking at the DJs who I'd been booking, who were a little bit older than me, and thinking, I don't actually want your life. Your life looks a bit lonely. You're getting a bit fatter and you're not smiling as much. And I just started to think, maybe there's something else here.
Yeah.
And it's not doing this for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
But that's what we're going to get onto in the next edition of this podcast.
And of course, the success from the love of music and DJing has led us to what we're doing now.
It has indeed. Yeah. So I think we both really lived the life, didn't we? We were both really deeply involved in, I would say we were walking encyclopedias of everything you needed to know about the UK and European dance scene from about 1988 to about the mid to late 2000s.
Yep.
For sure.
Absolutely. And it's actually an interesting point you made about, you know, the industry didn't exist. I was just dragged into this by my love of the music and needing to go to clubs and to record shops and stuff where I needed to go there if I wanted to get the music that I wanted to get, or hear the music.
That's what I wanted to move on to, talking about music. So carry on, talk about, you know, how what the music was like for you.
Yeah.
But how that played into it.
So, you know, as I said, I kind of started as a teenager at home, and I was listening to cassettes of DJs and not knowing this music that they were using to mix, and especially with cutting and scratching and that kind of hip hop style of DJing, they were using a lot of old break beats and funk songs and things like that. And I had never heard this music before. So, but I was fascinated by it. I was taking cassettes to the record shop in my local town and playing it to the guys that worked in there. And sometimes they could identify the songs, and then they would look. I remember they would look in a big book to find the track, to basically see if it was available as in most cases a US import, and they would have to order it. And if I could afford it, I'd want 2 copies, obviously, which they just thought was weird.
So why would you want 2 copies?
Because hip hop and scratch DJs quite often go back to back with 2 copies of the same track, finding the break beat, going backwards and forwards between them. So you need 2 copies to do that. And of course, it's easy these days, but we'll come on to modern tech. But I just, you know, I was fanatical about music, and it wasn't just hip hop either. Like before that, I was into, you know, just a lot of pop music that was around at the time. And, you know, my mum got me a record player, and any kind of spare money that I had, I would be spending it on 7-inch singles. Just really obsessed with music. But hip hop, and then subsequently sort of dance music and house music, I just became obsessed with the stuff that you didn't hear on the radio. Like if it was sort of underground and different and kind of avant-garde and strange, like that's what I was seeking out. And just became a real obsessive about it, about what labels and producers and you know, you would know whether a track was from New York or Chicago based on the telephone number on the label, because it had the sort of the area code and that kind of thing. So a real geek about it. And I just sort of had an insatiable appetite for getting new music, especially sort of US import stuff. So when I was living in London, I didn't have a lot of money, wasn't, you know, in a high paid job or anything, and buying US imports was expensive.
Especially if you want 2 copies. Cause
yes,
it's like,
yeah.
Even back then, £40 for a couple of double packs.
Yeah, exactly. And so I had 2 things. First of all, trying to find the music that I was hearing on cassettes was tricky. So I remember me and my friend driving around London in his car, listening to Tony Humphries, famous New York DJ, listening to one of his mixes and just loving every single song that was on there, but not knowing what these tracks were, and going into all the record shops and playing the cassette and hoping that the guys in the record store would know and, you know, hope that they may have it or be able to get it. And, you know, I still remember the day that I bought CC Rogers' Someday. Like it was, you know, it's a classic house record now, but at that time it was the hottest record in the world, and it was a US import, and they weren't many in London. They were difficult to get, and I remember the day when about 10 copies came into the Vinyl Zone record store in Fulham, and Jazzy M, who's a famous Ministry of Sound DJ, actually used to work in there and had the copy, and I just remember getting my hands on it. So I still fondly remember these moments of like searching for and identifying and then getting my hands on music. And then, but like I say, it was expensive. So at that time, I wasn't earning full time from DJing, so I needed to get a job. And the first job that I had was in a music distribution company. So my job was to basically sit in the office. I had all the new releases that were coming in from UK labels, and sit there with a record player and a speaker, calling other distribution companies in other countries, like in Germany and France, and playing them like all the bits of the songs that were coming out in the UK and selling. So basically exporting.
Down the phone.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So,
we complain about Beatport's little player now. But...
yeah. So basically working in the export department for that company. But I begged them to give me a job going out on the vans, is what it was called, which was basically taking the UK releases, but also imported US and Italian, mostly the dance music, and going out in a white van, driving all around the record stores in the centre of London, and basically selling all the import records to those stores. And it was through that process that I had access to all the music I could want, because not only did I have great music for the company I worked for, and I could, squirrel away a few copies of things that I wanted, but I was going into all the other record shops, so I was very, on the ball with the new releases that were coming out from every label and every other distributor. So that, for me, was a brilliant time, because that's where I really networked with everybody in the industry. I mean, some of the people that worked in these record stores went on to have, Terry Farley and Rocky and Diesel. They became big producers and big names in the scene. They were just the guys that worked behind the counter in the store. So so that love for music and the nerdiness and the need to get the next new thing led me to a lot of networking and a lot of opportunities.
I think what people don't realise as well is, in today's world where music is so everywhere, it was a scarcity. It was a hard thing to find. I mean, I remember getting to the record stores on the right day at the right time, hoping you could get there first to listen through stuff.
Yes.
There's only 1 or 2 copies of some of it.
Yeah.
And then I remember a little bit later on in my career being allowed to go downstairs where the music actually arrived, and then getting a chance to listen through it all before it came up to the shelves. And then later on in my career, I remember being able to go to the where I would have crossed paths with Your World, go to the distributor for the north of England where I lived. And I remember a DJ used to fly over from Dublin, Podge he was called. He used to play at U2's club, The Kitchen. He used to fly over from Dublin every month to come and go to the UK distributor, or a UK distributor with me. I'd pick him up from the airport. He'd be scared stiff because they had 3 lanes on our motorways. He'd never seen any lane, that you couldn't take a horse on yet. He hated the motorways in England. He really hated them. They were too big, too busy. Anyway, Podge would be scared stiff in the passenger seat. And we'd go to the distributor and do exactly what you said. We were now ahead of even the shops, never mind the other DJs, just because we wanted to get stuff first. But it also reminds me of the whole distribution network behind the scenes for DJs with promotional companies. And this is again something that when you look at Zip DJ and BPM Supreme and DJ City and Promo Only, all of these digital companies nowadays, where you subscribe and they give you upfront material, they all grew out of what I'm describing now, which is literally promotional companies would get 50, 100, maybe 200 if it was a really big song, copies of a track, which they'd send to DJs like me. And then
being on that list was
gold. It was gold.
They were constantly
taking people off and putting them on. Yeah.
That's right,
And at one point I was getting so much music sent to me that they were making me go to the post office and collect it because the postman wouldn't bring it. But this was good because the postman, Paul, used to nick it because his mate Billy was one of my DJ rivals. So he'd rifle through my music. Oh, there's a double pack from the States here. He won't miss one. But of course, these promotional companies, they were like, Phil, why haven't you played this? Why haven't you told us how it's going down? Because they used to literally pester you for your charts and for your reactions to these tunes. Quite rightfully, they were giving them to you for nothing. And I'm like, I've not had it. So
it was a competitive time, wasn't it?
It was, and no harm done by Paul and Billy. I'd probably have done the same if I was a postman.
It's funny hearing you talk about double packs. You've mentioned them a couple of times. It's actually just got me fondly remembering them. Like, that was a real major promotional tool for labels, that especially if it was a British label that had signed a track from the US or from maybe from Italy, and they had the original version, but they would create a remix package. It's still done today. And this remix package would sometimes consist of, maybe 4 or 5 different remixers having a go at this song. And so this facilitated the need for a double pack, because these were quite long remixes. If they were all squeezed on one record, they would be too quiet. And they were sort of like gold dust. If there was like a hot new double pack that was out there, you needed to get your hands on them.
Or if there was an a cappella on side F, you need to buy a 3-pack
That's very
which
true.
would cost you like 30 quid just to get the a cappella. You know, nowadays you
true.
press a button on your gear and there's an a cappella, but it wasn't like that back then.
And actually a lot of the, you know, we're going to come on to how things are, but those remixes on those B-sides of those double packs, those promo double packs, those are not on digital services.
No, you're quite right. They're not available, which is sad because it's a loss for good. You know, it's only the DJs that have those physical records, which is why a resource like Discogs is so good, because at least there's a catalogue of them.
Yeah.
At least there is a catalogue, and the Discogs is a great website because also, if you register as a record collector, you can actually list your collections on there. So it is a good place, I find, to track this down. And YouTube, let's be honest.
Yes.
Because you can generally find stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because someone's uploaded it. It's almost like an archive nowadays.
That's true.
Now, of course, one thing we have to teach our students is there's no point having the music unless you've got the gear to play it on. And the gear back then was, well, I think it was rudimentary, wasn't it? What did you start with?
Well, I didn't have any money when I was a kid, so just being able to go and buy what I wanted was impossible. I was quite weird, I would say, as a teenage boy, because whereas a lot of my friends from school might have had scantily clad women pinned up on their bedroom walls, I actually had a picture from a magazine of two Technics 1210s and a mixer. Like, that was what I coveted the most at that time. So initially, like I said, when I wanted to emulate the sounds that I was hearing, especially with scratching, you only really needed one turntable at that point. And I had the record player that my mum had bought me, and it was a kind of music centre. So it had a turntable for playing records, and it had a cassette section, and it had a radio built into it as well.
Big tuner knob on the front.
Yes. And but the record player part of it also had this system where the centre pin in the middle of the platter was very tall, and it had this mechanical device at the top of it where you could stack 3 or 4 7-inch singles at the top, set it playing, and what it would do is when it would finish playing the 7-inch that was on the platter, it would get to the end and it would drop the next record down. Now, this big long centre pin was no good for hip hop DJing because it's difficult to get the records on and off, so that had to go.
What did you do? Just saw it?
I basically pulled it out. You could pull the whole thing out, and then I was like, oh, so I need some kind of thing to put the record
pencil?
on. So I had a pencil, yeah.
Yeah, the classic.
So it was a cut-off pencil.
Yeah.
And actually, like a lot of my old records now, like because the pencil was sort of was shoved in the centre pin and was just cut off, but the top of it still had the lead part in the middle. So you can see on my records like a sort of scrawly circle pencil marks around the hole in the record where I was putting it on the platter and trying to find that hole. So I started to basically hack what I had. And that was the first thing, was a turntable where by this point I could put a record on, put the needle on the record and start to make scratchy noises. But I couldn't turn that sound on and off. I had the volume control on the front, but it was a very sort of slow move between, 0 and full volume. So I was, could kind of do it, but it wasn't quite right. So I did need a mixer at some point. And I actually didn't build my own mixer. I did actually buy one.
You didn't do the time-honoured build a mixer from a book you ordered from Amateur Electronics in the back of the paper?
No. But at that time there was a chain of stores in the UK called Tandy, and they sold DJ mixers in, and there was a brand called Realistic, and I remember it was £70 this mixer that I wanted, and I actually got a Saturday job. I had 2 Saturday jobs, one working in a butcher's and one working in a petrol station, and I saved up the money to get my first Realistic mixer. Now, it didn't have a crossfader on it. It was just 4 vertical faders. And I had seen, by this point, I was starting to watch, basically see TV appearances of DJs, and also watch the DMC DJ World Championship VHS videos, and seeing that these DJs had this fader going from side to side. And I was
what is this madness?
Yeah, and I was like, so that's how they're doing it. That's how they're making the fast cutting sounds. But I didn't have that on my mixer. So my solution to that, when I was teaching myself to turn the fader on and off, it was to turn the mixer sideways, so that all of the channel faders were now moving from zero on the right hand side to full volume on the left hand side.
You had 4 crossfaders now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then in order to shorten the distance of that fader, because I wasn't getting precise cutting sounds by having to go the full distance of a long fader, I sellotaped a piece of cardboard at about 30% up the volume, and then just turned the master level up, so that basically everything
was loud enough.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's how I taught myself the motion of cutting the fader from side to side. But then I needed another deck. I only had one deck at this point. You know, I needed to be able to mix into other songs and to do back-to-backs. So I actually ended up tearing out the turntable part of the music system, much to my mum's.
Your mum loved that, yeah.
My mum's disgust. I tore out that part of it, got the power cable out, got the audio cable out, and then I just had this turntable part. And then I went to a car boot sale and found another music centre very similar that had a turntable in it, bought that for £5 and ripped that turntable part out as well. And I thought, I need something to put these 2 decks in. So I actually pulled apart the chest of drawers from my bedroom, took all the clothes out of it.
You still got a photo of this
No,
setup?
I never got photos, unfortunately. And my mum wasn't a photo type person, so there's not much evidence of this. And yeah, basically mounted these 2 decks inside the drawer that did have my pants and socks in it, like half an hour before. And I had 2 decks next to each other, and then my mixer on the right hand side of them, and that is what I taught myself on.
It reminds me of when I started to learn the techniques you were just describing, like how to actually do this thing called DJing. And I was bit later on than you. I'd already had that experience, like cobbling together stuff so I can do pretend radio shows for people when they're having a shower. I used to put the speaker in the bathroom with a long cable into my bedroom where I had all the bits of hi-fi I could find and the little microphone that came with my cassette player, and tried to do like the top 40, and I got quite good at it. I'd already done all that side of it, although the skills were certainly more timing than scratching for me. But when I finally got my decks, and I was in the position that you were in, where I had a setup I could properly practice on, I just remember, and they were cheap, they weren't Technics or anything, I just remember thinking, I've finally done it, I finally got some, and I finally got 6 or 7 dance tracks, vinyl, that I can practice. But I'd literally never done it before. I literally did not have a clue what the DJs I'd been watching when I'd been going out clubbing were actually doing with this gear. I didn't know how to listen to the track that everyone else wasn't hearing. Once I'd figured out that you had to play them both at once, which I kind of knew you were meant to do, but I just never compute. I'll give you a really good example. I was helping a friend set up a YouTube type studio recently. And the reason he wanted to set up a studio was that he had a massive TV behind him, and he wanted to show, he's a coach, he wanted to show things on the TV while talking to the camera. But the TV was reflecting. It was reflecting the iPad he was reading off, it was reflecting the lights. It looked terrible, this TV. So I said, you need a green screen. You need a green screen. Put a green screen up. We'll put what you want to talk about on the green screen, and there'll be no reflection. It's brilliant. We set it all up. And he was really pleased for about 5 seconds. And then he looked at it and he went, but when am I going to see the picture on this screen thing? How do I know what to point at when I'm presenting? And we're like, well, you're not. It's green. The computer does the clever stuff. And he's like, well, how does that work? How am I going to do it? I can't see what and he just couldn't compute what a green screen was. He was blank. I was like that with DJing. I was just like, how, I remember it so clearly because I wasn't scared by this revelation. I was really, really excited by it because I'm like, I'm about to learn something that I probably knew was going to change my life. I'm about to learn how to beat mix. And I spent months doing it, months and months and months. And every now and then, 1 in 10 you'd hit. But you still didn't really know how you'd managed it. And I remember where the decks were set up. I remember who was there. I remember the records I was using. And that's always stuck with me because learning these skills at the very beginning is hard, isn't it? But I just got one more story. This is kind of like the end of that process for me. which was the first time I saw someone use the loop on a CDJ. We just had CDJs fitted in our club. And I always remember it was Danny Howells, a progressive house DJ at the time. And he just pressed loop, 2, 3, 4, out loop. And the track just carried on. And I was like, I went through the 5 stages of grief. I was like, no, you can't do that. No, I don't believe it. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's so sad. How can I do it? All in about 10 seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, that was the beginning of the end of this whole thing we've described. Because from looping on CDJs, a whole new era was being ushered in, a whole new way of doing it. It was, the skills changed. And this manual beat mixing, this what you were learning, scratching, what I was learning, headphones holding stuff together, that whole world was never going to be the same again. And it all started with that loop function on the first CDJ.
I remember it as well.
Again, we're moving on to this in the next episode of this podcast to the way things are now.
I will just share another little gear story, which was actually the movement from that setup, which I was explaining to you. So these turntables were belt drive. And they didn't have any tempo adjustment on them. You know, they were only set for 45 or 33. Now, I had seen through the videos that I was watching that if you had professional turntables, they had this fader on the side of them, which was basically how you change the speed. So I was always, you know, happy to try and hack things and try and figure things out.
You don't say, Steve.
But not always with the greatest of intelligence. So I figured that if I could basically put some kind of fader on the power supply to the deck, that maybe I could basically have a tempo control. So I went to our local Woolworths and procured, shall we say, 2 domestic light dimmer switches.
It's a fair premise.
And took them back and wired them, you know, basically put the power to that and then out the other side of it, thinking that this would change the speed of the deck. Of course, it didn't. It just basically meant they didn't have any power. but I was like, I was just trying everything that I could to try and replicate it. But when I actually did eventually get, because I jumped from that setup literally to Technics 1210s that my girlfriend at the time helped me get a loan to be able to buy. And it was so weird DJing on those for the first time because I didn't have to adjust the speed myself by pushing my finger on the label. When I let go of the record to drop it in, I didn't need to push it like I used to. So it was really weird getting used to.
It's actually harder, isn't it? It's harder when you got used to really shit equipment to play on good equipment. It's like it's a learning curve.
Yeah, I had to relearn. So. But yeah, good times.
So let's talk about mixing for a bit because we both got, you know, you were a scratch DJ, you then got into house. So you were technical right from the very beginning, really. So talk to me about what part mixing played in your DJing.
Well, because I'd you know learnt to scratch and especially to go backwards and forwards between, you know, break beats and those kinds of things. I'd learnt a lot of precision of dropping tracks in, not really needing to spend a lot of time, you know, getting things in time. You could drop things in quite quickly and adjust on the fly. So technically I was very confident with turntables. And then when I moved into house, I mean, at that time, sort of, you know, 87, 88, 89, the music scene in London was very, it was called Balearic, but like it was a real mixture of all different types.
It's kind of open format, wasn't it?
Yeah. And a lot of the, you know, sort of hip hop music at the time was borrowing from house and vice versa. You know, there was a lot of early breakbeat stuff that basically was house, but it had hip hop breakbeats in it. So I loved this kind of, you know, this melding of different genres and mashing things up as a DJ. And so one of the most influential records that I ever owned was called Acapellas Anonymous Volume 1. And I think it had something like 7 different acapellas on each side, and they are still the gold standard classic acapellas. So things like Loletta Holloway, Love Sensation, and Let No Man Put Us Under, and there's loads on there, and they've been sampled by thousands and thousands of people because somebody decided to bootleg these particular acapellas. And these acapellas originally would have been only available, like you said earlier, on the sort of 12-inch dub versions of promo versions of the songs. But someone put them all together on this compilation, and that alongside things like Martin Luther King's famous speech and any other a cappella that I could get my hands on was a real key part of the way that I DJ'd back then, which was not everybody did that, because it was quite technically difficult as well to keep a cappellas in time. But I made it a kind of, I was obsessive about that as well, about getting the timing right. And I know you've shared the story as well about the Martin Luther King speech and getting it to sit perfectly over other songs. But I think the best mix that I ever remember pulling off was playing Sterling Void, It's All Right, which was featuring the singer Paris Brightledge, and it had an a cappella on the main release, and it's a very sort of uplifting, soulful, spiritual house classic. And I was mixing the a cappella of that over another track in a club, and that a cappella, if you know it, it's got a very big long gap in it. Because it respects the original song. It's basically a pure a cappella, so it's taken all the instrumentation out. So there's verse, chorus, and then there's a big long gap, which is an instrumental section in the original, before the vocal starts coming back in. And I was mixing that, it was perfectly in time, and I also managed to basically hold strong and be confident that it was remaining in time through that big long gap. And then when it dropped back in again, it was still perfectly in time and right on the right moment for the drop in the track that I was playing. And it was just one of those kind of like, and people loved it. And I still remember it now as just being like the best executed mix that I've ever done. And
I love it.
Technically quite difficult.
I love it. So
because what people used to do with that a cappella is that it came to the point where the big gap was. Then in the headphones,
they go forward and wait,
forward,
like a cue,
find
like a cue.
and cue it, and then drop it in. But
which of course you could have done, but
yep.
you're a perfectionist. It reminds me of any time we drive into a tunnel in the car, the kids will sing the song that fades out on the radio and keep singing it and keep singing it, and then see if they're still in time when we pull out the other side.
Yeah.
So it's a classic. We once had an article on the website. I'm going back a long time. Things that prove that you're a DJ, and that was one of them.
That's true. Yeah.
Tapping along or singing along and seeing if you're still in time.
Yeah.
Or getting your windshield wipers to in time with the music, even if you had to cue them by turning them on and off, trying to keep them in time. Anyway.
And how about you? Tell me
my mixing. Well, my mixing was, I was influenced by a DJ who I'm always really happy to name drop because he was fantastic. A guy called Dave Booth, who played in Manchester clubs. And again, this is kind of around the time house music was hitting. So Dave turned into a house DJ like we all did. But he was playing, when I first saw him, in a club in the city centre that had two turntables, and he played 7-inches. He was just buying 7-inch singles. And he was very, very good at timing. He was very good at cutting from one track to another, playing pop music, playing old psychedelic 60s, playing indie, playing hip hop, playing early house, but we didn't call it house, it was just dance. But he could cut from one track to another, like almost, it looked effortless, using 7-inches. And so his style was to keep the beat going at all times, to keep the counting right, to keep the dance floor moving. But he didn't ever mix tunes into each other. It was always cut. He wasn't interested in making something new. He just wanted to...
But without dropping the rhythm, basically.
Without dropping the rhythm.
Yeah.
And that really influenced me. So when house music arrived, and I obviously learned beat mixing, and I enjoyed beat mixing, and I enjoyed cutting out the boring bits. I wanted the mix to stay interesting. I was always obsessed with getting out of the way of the music, is the way I would put it. If I could play a set where people really loved it, but didn't really spot every transition, and didn't get bored, and I had a steady queue of spotty lads wanting to know what this track is and what this track is at the little porch on the side of our DJ booth that we used to have. If I could do that, then I was happy. So for me, what happened was, over the 15 years of my professional DJing career, I got more and more obsessed with that. I got more and more obsessed with, how do I get out of the way of the music? How do I do the opposite of beat mixing? How do I keep it so it feels like I've beat mixed it all, but actually I'm just playing records one after the other? And it got to the point where I was very good at it, but I'd almost done myself out of a job. I was almost like, I could go from one song to another in no one knew what I'd done, but it took me about 2 seconds. And that to me was actually, it's kind of the opposite of today's hands-on style. But I was very proud of being able to do that. And I listen back to my old mixes now, and they do sound like that. So, but as I said earlier, as soon as I saw someone hit that loop button, I knew my game was up, because I can do that with any records if you give me a loop button. So it was only when technology arrived, it was only when the things that were in my head, if only I could make the record do this or change that or get this key to this key or make it faster than the ±8 will let me do. It was only when the technology arrived that it both killed the way I thought DJing should be done, but also opened up this whole new world of what we now call digital DJing. So that was kind of the chapter marker for me. That was okay. And that coincidentally is where my professional DJing took a turn, which again, we've got more podcasts coming about what happened next in our lives and our school.
Yeah.
So yeah, mixing for me was always, I was trying to downplay what I did. I was trying to do it very well, but as little as possible.
Yeah, so we were quite different. I think I would definitely be a bit more showy. I took pride in being able to do seamless mixing as well as being able to do showy stuff. But for me, I was always looking for ways to create a different version of the song that I was playing, which you know what I mean, like, rather than just letting it play. Because I felt anyone could do that. But
So no, I mean that does remind me. With me, I would definitely do that when I found something in my head that the record didn't do, that I realized I could do. So for instance, one of my tricks was to get 2 copies of a song, and if it had like a trumpet section in it for 8 bars, I'd play one copy 2 beats behind the other one. So I could switch so I could change the melody that the trumpets were playing by pulling bits out of each. And so
you had some hip hop sensibility.
Maybe that's what you'd call it, but it was more I felt constrained by the tools, and I didn't want to change the record so much that people got annoyed. I wanted them to hear the records they liked. I think that's probably where it came from. And then, as we said, suddenly digital gives you the chance to do anything that you can think of, which is a blessing and a curse. So talking of performing, let's talk about playing gigs. Let's talk about memories of the days of actually getting in front of a crowd back in those times, which seemed, people could smoke on the dance floor. There were no phones. No one was recording anything. If someone came in with a camera, we wanted to know why they were there and where the pictures were going, or else they wouldn't last very long. Very different times.
Absolutely.
What's a memorable gig for you, thinking back all those years?
I think that a lot of it is a bit of a blur. I used to like a drink when I was DJing, which might explain why I was never a full-time DJ, to be honest.
Because full-time DJ and full-time drunk kind of go hand in hand.
Exactly. I have sort of fond but hazy memories of many sort of like real. I used to play quite a lot of illegal parties in London, like, which would basically just be because at that time clubs used to close at around 2 a.m. So if you there were a lot of club events that were put on in warehouse spaces and in kind of unused commercial units and that kind of stuff, and amazing, parties that would go on till like 6, 7 in the morning, have an amazing crowd there. And, I remember those gigs. Really fondly, especially the ones that were just sort of, a 200 person sweaty basement with no health and safety laws being followed at all, and just a real vibe. But I think probably the most sort of memorable DJ gig for me was related to a time when I was working at Ministry of Sound in the compilations department. I actually started a label called the Future Sound of the UK, or FSUK. And this was at the time when big beat sound or kind of break sound was really blowing up. So, Fatboy Slim would be an example of that at that time, and Chemical Brothers and that kind of stuff. And I did compilation albums with Derek Delage and the Freestylers and Bentley Rhythm Ace and Cutler Rock and a few other kind of names from that scene. And we did a few launch party events at Ministry of Sound. And this included one where me and my friend Paul Jackson, we DJ'd together. I can't remember what we called ourselves. We probably had some silly name, but we set up 4 turntables, but facing each other. So we had 2 decks and a mixer on one side, 2 decks and a mixer on the other side, facing each other DJing. And we did 2 or 3 gigs as this duo, and we were playing a lot of breakbeat, a lot of hip hop, and moving around really creatively between all these tracks, almost like a back-to-back, but we were playing together. And so this meant that if he was digging in his crate for a record and his mix was going out, I could reach over to his turntable and adjust the tempo to keep it in. If I was going to drop something in on my deck, which vocally would have clashed with something he was playing. I could drop it in and cut the fader on his mixer, and he could do the same on mine. It was a really, like unique kind of setup and really great fun, and just such a shame that we never recorded it or videoed it. So you got to take my word for it. But
yeah, along with your first decks, this is all being recorded probably for the first time.
Citation needed.
Yeah, yeah. Wikipedia wouldn't be happy with that entry. Fantastic. Well, at least this podcast is making some of this stuff slightly more permanent, we would hope, as long as we keep paying the hosting fees.
And how about you? Tell us about your performing highlights.
Well, there were so many because I've got fond memories of the club that I used to promote, which kind of made all this happen, which was called Tangled. And Tangled got the coffee table book treatment as well back when it all finished. And so that really has got the best memories for me, because it was like you just described. It was the sweaty room with 400 people in, and a loose policy on the door regarding anything that would stop the fun, shall we say? Yeah. So it was a great place. But Tangled's got all my best memories. It was better than playing at Privilege in Ibiza, the biggest club in the world. It was in the Guinness Book of Records as the biggest club in the world at the time.
Of course, Privilege, if people have heard of the club Universe in Ibiza now, that's the same building, isn't it?
And it was called Coup before that.
That's right.
So I played at Privilege, which was fantastic. The dance floor was in the middle, had a swimming pool in the middle of it.
Yeah.
It held 5,000 people or something in the main room, maybe more. But the important thing, or the nemesis for me, was that there was a gangplank to the DJ booth, which happened to be set up in the middle of the swimming pool.
I remember it.
And so you had to walk this gangplank in front of the dance floor that was in the Guinness Book of Records as being part of the biggest club in the world. You had to walk this gangplank to get to the DJ booth. And I was playing at 5 a.m. And being a good Brit, I turned up at 9 p.m. and there's no one there. No one there at 10, no one there at 11, no one there at 12. Started getting busy at 2. So by 5, I'm ready for the gig, shall we say. And by 5, I've got to walk this gangplank. And of course, it's records. So I've got a box of records, not 2 boxes. I haven't got a box on each side, so I'm balanced as I walk along this gangplank, a couple of beers down. I've got 1. So unless I held it like a delivery man in both arms, I was going to be unbalanced. And I was so paranoid I couldn't talk to anyone for about an hour before, because I knew I was going to have to perform this thing. Anyway, it all went fine. But that wasn't my favourite place. Tangle was my favourite place because I knew the crowd, I knew the music. I could play there on my own for the whole night, 10 till 6 in the morning, because by this point we were allowed to open all night. So I could do an 8-hour set. They knew me, I knew them. Well, what a place to play, what a DJ's dream.
And I guess because you were the promoter and you were the resident, like you were there every week, so you could hone your craft. The nerves you wouldn't have had nerves.
Not really, no. The nerves were keeping half an eye on the front door to see how many people were coming in.
Of course, yeah.
I knew at 11 p.m. how much money we were going to make that night, and if it wasn't looking good, I was in a bad mood, But the most memorable night, I think, from Tangled, and there were many, was when me and my co-DJ Terry had decided that we were going to do the Tangled's top 40 of all time. And it was the early days of forums. So we got everyone on our club forum to vote. And we got this chart. And we bought one of those signs that are totally not in fashion anymore, but I'm sure you remember them, that used to have LEDs that flashed across the front, any wording that you typed into a little keyboard.
They were big in the gatecrasher scene, weren't they?
So we had one of these long signs, and we hung it up in the DJ booth where it looked onto the dance floor, everyone was on top of everyone. And we were typing in the artist and title of every song. So we're like 40, Robert Miles, Children, 39, 3-in-1 remix of whatever. And so this was not easy. This was worse than a BlackBerry phone at the time. This was not an easy thing to type on. And as the night went on, we're playing 40 trance songs, right? So these aren't 1.5-minute songs. We got to about 4 a.m. and we were hit number 5, and we're like, I can't even focus on this screen, never mind type it in. And at the same time, we're trying to mix these tracks in with half a degree of competence. Delirium Silence was number 1, by the way.
Oh wow!
The Sanctuary mix, not the frankly shocking Tiesto remix. But anyway, I digress. But that was probably my favourite night, because my friend Tony, who was a photographer, was trying to record it all, and he couldn't do it because he was just in stitches, just watching us trying to cope with the crowd, stopping our cigarette going out that we perched on the side of the DJ booth while we were trying to type this. It was a night of chaos in our DJ booth that's not been repeated since.
It's funny you mentioning Delirium Silence as well, because whilst clubs like yours were making these records huge, we at Ministry of Sound were tapping into those. You know, obviously they would get signed and be turned into hits because of that underground success, and then we would be putting them on compilation albums, and we had exactly the same debate about which is the right version to be putting on there. But I agree with you.
To be fair, the Tiesto one was the one that blew up in the end, but I think it took all the fun out of it. It was a lovely, well made, well produced little underground house song that was ruined by the trance sound that flushed through everything. But anyway, we have dug deep, I'd say.
We've managed to not sound like two old blokes complaining about things for the most of it, but we slipped into it just a little bit there, didn't we?
Maybe, but you know, as I was saying to my 16-year-old son, it's not complaining. It's a viewpoint from the years. And anyway, having reminisced about what life was like for us at the point where I'm starting to see DJs using the looping button on CDJs and look at the weight they're putting on and the fact that they haven't got girlfriends anymore and think, maybe I don't want that world for myself. Maybe there's another route for me. I'm starting to question all this stuff.
Yeah.
You're going through, am I going to be doing this forever?
Yeah.
Things are changing in your life as well.
Yeah.
And then serendipitously, we kind of found each other.
Yeah.
And that is where this episode of Digital DJ Tips podcast Uncut is going to pause, because in the next episode we're going to follow the same framework: gear, music, mixing, performing and success, to talk about what's happened since the 16 years of running a DJ school and helping other people to get out of DJing even just a bit of what we've got out of it, and hopefully take it in their own direction as well.
Yeah,
we've got some great stuff to share in that one. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's been a nice chat.
For now, though,
good to reminisce. Good to get the memories down while I still have them.
yeah, indeed. For now, though, from both of us, get good, get out there and make the moments. We'll see you in the next one.